Welcome to RenewHer, a podcast for women over 50 ready to reignite their energy and explore what's next. I'm Genell Lemley, brain fitness coach. Here, you'll hear real stories from women taking on new challenges after 50, along with brain health tips to boost focus, energy, and the mindset to move forward with confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to another RenewHer Reflection. I want to start today with a question. What if the most meaningful chapter of your life hasn't happened yet? For a long time, I thought the biggest new beginnings happened when we were young. Graduating from college, starting a career, moving to a new city, beginning a family. Those were the seasons when people changed their lives. But somewhere along the way, many of us start believing that our opportunities for new beginnings are behind us. We stop looking ahead with possibility and start looking back at what we didn't do. We begin to wonder if the opportunity for something new has already passed us by, that by the time we're in our 50s or 60s, our story has already been written, that it's simply too late. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, if only I had started sooner, if only I had made a different choice, maybe I missed an opportunity, I want you to know you're not alone. But I also want to challenge that belief because I don't think it's true. Life rarely unfolds exactly the way we imagined it would. We make plans, then life happens. A career changes, a marriage ends, a diagnosis arrives, children leave home, parents need care, a loved one dies. Or perhaps nothing dramatic happens at all. You simply wake up one morning and realize the life you've built no longer feels like the life you're meant to live. The version of yourself that carried you through your 30s or 40s doesn't quite fit anymore. And that's a strange place to be, because part of you knows something needs to change, while another part whispers, isn't it too late? I think one of the biggest myths we believe is that beginning again requires certainty. It doesn't. It requires courage. No one who begins again has all the answers. They simply take the next step, then the next, then another. Looking back, it appears courageous. Living it feels uncertain. History is full of women who remind us that purpose doesn't have an expiration date. Take Julia Child, for example. She didn't become a household name until after she turned 50. Her first cookbook was published when she was 49. Her television career began at 51. Imagine if she decided she was too old to start over. How many kitchens would have missed the joy she brought? Then there's Ingalls Wilder. She spent decades as a teacher, farmer, wife, and journalist before publishing the first Little House book at age 65. The stories that generations of children grew up reading were still inside her for more than 6 decades. And sometimes beginning again comes from an unexpected place. Grandma Moses didn't begin painting until arthritis made embroidery impossible. She was in her late 70s. Most people would have seen that season as one of limitation. Instead, it became the season that revealed her greatest gift of painting. And then there's Diana Nyad. After multiple failed attempts over several decades, she became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without a shark cage. She was 64 years old. She didn't succeed because it was easy. She succeeded because she refused to believe the calendar got the final say. Now, most of us aren't going to become the next Julia Child or Grandma Moses, and that's okay, because extraordinary lives aren't reserved for famous people. Every single day, ordinary women begin again. The woman who returns to school at 56, the widow who discovers a love of travel after believing she'd never travel again, the executive who leaves corporate life to mentor young leaders because helping people matters more than climbing another rung on the ladder, the grandmother who starts a small business from her kitchen table, the retired teacher who starts a nonprofit to tutor children who need someone to believe in them, the cancer survivor who decides that as she was given another chance at life, she's going to spend it giving hope to others. Their names may never appear in history books, but their courage matters just as much. Now, before we go any further, I want to say something that's important. This episode isn't meant to suggest that everyone needs to begin again. Maybe you're exactly where you want to be. Maybe you've built a life that brings you deep joy and fulfillment. If that's you, I hope you're celebrating this season. Beginning again isn't about chasing something bigger simply because the world tells us we should. It's about listening to ourselves. For some women, that means embracing a brand new chapter. For others, it means settling more deeply into the one they're already living. Both are beautiful. But if there's a quiet voice inside you that's been whispering, there's still something I want to do, someone I still want to become, then this conversation is for you. But you don't have to look to history books to find women who have begun again. Some of the most inspiring examples are the women we encounter in our own lives. In fact, through this podcast, I've had the privilege of sitting down with women who remind me that reinvention doesn't have an expiration date. Women who have courageously stepped into new chapters, not because they had everything figured out, but because they were willing to listen to the voice inside telling them there was more. In episode 10 of the RenewHer podcast, I talked with Julie Kober. Julie spent nearly 3 decades in senior corporate leadership roles, eventually serving as a chief human resources officer. From the outside, she had built the career many people would consider successful. But inside, something was changing. The corporate environment that had once been fulfilling no longer felt aligned with who she was becoming. Combined with stress-related health challenges and her husband's cancer diagnosis, Julie found herself at a crossroads. At 52, she made the courageous decision to leave corporate life and create a new path. Today, she helps other high-performing women redefine success and create lives and careers that truly fit who they are. Julie shared something that really stayed with me. Reinvention isn't always about becoming someone new. Sometimes it's about remembering who you truly are. In episode 9, I spoke with Giselle Carson. Giselle's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes beginning again isn't just something we do once. It's something we do throughout our lives. At 15, Giselle immigrated from Cuba to Canada without speaking the language, leaving behind everything familiar. Later, she immigrated again, this time to the United States, rebuilding her identity, career, and future. She transitioned from physical therapy into law, built a successful corporate immigration practice, and discovered endurance athletics later in life. Today, while maintaining her law practice, she's a 5-time Ironman, 30-time marathoner, 3-time ultramarathoner, author, and lifelong learner. What really stood out to me was her strong belief that growth doesn't stop at midlife. It accelerates when we allow ourselves to keep becoming. And then there is Catherine Baker, who I spoke to in episode 8. Catherine's story reminds us that beginning again doesn't always happen because something went wrong. Sometimes it happens because something that once fulfilled us no longer does. Catherine had built and sold 2 multi-million-dollar companies. By many measures, she had achieved success. But after stepping away from entrepreneurship, she found herself feeling bored, disconnected, and questioning what was next. At 67, Catherine realized that although she had achieved so much, there was still another chapter waiting for her. She chose to begin again by launching a coaching business, moving to rural Texas, and listening to a message she couldn't ignore. Your unlived life is waiting for you. Her story is such a powerful reminder that the next chapter doesn't require us to throw away everything we've done before. It requires us to listen more closely to who we are becoming. These women are not exceptions. They are examples. Examples that our experience, wisdom, and years lived are not limitations. They are assets. Because when we begin again later in life, we don't start from zero. We start with everything we've learned, every challenge we've overcome, every lesson we've earned, every version of ourselves we've already become. And that brings me to my own story. I certainly never imagined that my own life would take the turns it has. If you had asked me 15 years ago what my future looked like, I couldn't have predicted any of it. I never imagined becoming a caregiver or becoming a widow far sooner than I expected. Those experiences changed me. Losing my husband at a young age changed the way I think about time. We often say, I'll do it when work slows down, when the kids are older, when I retire, when life settles down, when I have more confidence. But what if that when never comes? Losing my husband reminded me that tomorrow isn't promised, not in a fearful way, in a clarifying way. It helped me to see what truly matters. Since then, I've had 2 hip replacements. I've stepped outside my comfort zone in my 60s by taking on the 29029 Everesting Challenge, climbing Blackcomb Mountain in Whistler 8 times in 36 hours. I've left a corporate career. I started RenewHer Wellness. I've launched this podcast. None of those things were part of the plan. None of them happened because I felt completely ready. They happened because I finally realized that waiting for certainty often means waiting forever. One of the greatest gifts of getting older is perspective. When we're younger, we spend so much energy trying to prove ourselves. As we grow older, we begin asking different questions. What matters most? How do I want to spend the years I have left? Who do I still want to become? Those aren't signs that life is winding down. They're signs that wisdom is beginning to lead the way. Your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, and beyond can become some of the richest years of your life. Not because they're easy, but because they're intentional. Because you know yourself better. Because you have the wisdom you didn't have before. Because you finally understand what matters. And here's something I believe deeply. You don't begin again because your story is over. You begin again because your story isn't finished. So today, I'd like to leave you with one question. What have you been telling yourself is too late? Is it writing the book, starting the business, learning something new, taking better care of your health, traveling somewhere you've always dreamed of going, having the courage to finally pursue something that's been quietly sitting in your heart for years? Whatever it is, don't let your age become the reason you never begin. And I want to add something important here. Beginning again doesn't always mean changing your entire life. Sometimes it means adding something new to the life you've already created. Maybe it's running your first race, climbing a mountain, learning to ski, picking up a hobby you've always wanted to try, taking a class, saying yes to an adventure that stretches you beyond your comfort zone. Because beginning again isn't always about leaving something behind. Sometimes it's about discovering a new part of yourself within the life you've already built. When I think back on all the women we've talked about today, Julia Child began again. Laura Ingalls Wilder began again. Grandma Moses began again. Diana Nyad began again. Julie began again. Giselle began again. Catherine began again. And in my own way, I began again. Not because any of us knew exactly how the story would unfold, but because we found the courage to begin again by taking the first step before we had all the answers. Here's what I've learned. The courage to begin again isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about honoring everything that brought you here while believing the future still has something waiting for you. You are not behind. You are not finished. You have not missed your opportunity. You're simply standing at the beginning of a brand new chapter, and perhaps your most meaningful chapter yet. At the beginning of this episode, I told you that I used to believe the biggest new beginnings happen when we were young. Life has taught me something different. I believe some of life's most meaningful chapters don't begin until we've lived enough life to know what truly matters. We never outgrow our capacity to grow, to change, or to begin again. So if you've been wondering whether it's too late, I hope you'll remember this. It's never too late to begin again. Or perhaps, even more importantly, it's never too late to become more of who you were always meant to be. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over. There are still chapters waiting to be written. Keep growing, keep believing, and keep becoming the woman you were always meant to be. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Renew Her. If today's conversation sparks something in you, don't let it fade. Take even a small step toward what's next. If you found value in what you heard, please subscribe, leave a review, or share this podcast with a woman who's ready to take her next bold step. Together, we're building a community of strong, resilient women, navigating what's next with courage and purpose. Until next time, stay energized and keep embracing what's possible.